Parents fighting today against public and school libraries' social and political indoctrination, commonly the offering of pornography to children, is a news story all over the country, but dominantly the media and the political left frames it as a tale of fanatic, often religious, right-wingers seeking to ban books and persecute the LGBTQ community. Typically, they are all stereotyped as being based in the Republican political sphere. Parents everywhere, whatever their religious or political allegiance, face systemic debasement and libel. These smears are usually not true. It is a false narrative of defamation and stereotypes heralded by the political left that pushes a very specific ideological and political agenda, part of which comprises the powerful LGBTQ lobby, at least those rooted in far leftist political activism. I will evidence the facts here. In the case of the town of Camp Verde, Arizona, wherein a recent special town council meeting was held in an auditorium to accommodate the unusually large number of people who wanted to voice their perspective about, in essence, in this case, the local public library's influence in spreading what many regard as pornography to children. That's the essence of the story, although, as you'll see, the easy, cheap way to oppose such parents, including more than one left-wing activist out-of-town group aligned against parents seeking to protect the children in Camp Verde, is to simply paint them as haters and bigots, even if the core of the story is pornography, not silencing leftist gays and their kindred ideological clan. I was there with a video camera and recorded at least parts of every individual who cared to march up to the microphone and speak to the town council. I scurried back and forth between two microphones at opposite aisles to document what each person had to say. I post excerpts here, documenting the arguments before the town council. The council's Zoom technology failed that night, so this is the most exhaustive visual record of that meeting. A rough audio of the speakers that night is posted at Camp Verde's online town council website, but it is virtually inaudible. I wasn't planning on attending the special Camp Verde town council meeting about the library, but what pulled me in was this: the imploring of people throughout the county by the chairwoman of the Yavapai County Democrat Party via a left-wing activist lobbying group called Prescott Indivisible to attend the town council meeting and oppose local parents upset with the library who are routinely portrayed as haters and bigots against the LGBTQ community. These generic defamations and smears, I know from my own experience speaking to some of the key activist parents against the library for a prior video, are false and are merely exploitative tools to render very complicated social issues in simplistic terms, wherein leftist political activists are content in the smug, sanctimonious self-congratulation of marching under banners of tolerance and ethical justice, however illusory. In the heart of today's culture wars, even parents' simple call to protect children's innocence has turned political. And the online Democratic alert for leftists, signed by the county Democratic chairwoman Kathleen Sauer, to attend this special town council meeting to resist concerned parents, was headlined like this: "Great! Me too, I agree. So would almost everybody at that town council meeting, including most, if not all, of the people who hold different moral values than the political left." Ultimately, this verbiage against the protection of children is unjust garbage aimed at parents who, in my experience in Camp Verde and in attending the town council meeting, are only trying to watch out for their kids and who have nothing to do with Sauer's inflammatory accusations. There isn't much evidence to support such vicious slander, and if anyone could dig up any truth in such a headline, to use a rant individual commentary to stereotype an entire parental community movement is morally abominable. As visitors arrived at the town council meeting, they were met by propagandists passing out LGBTQ flags, even though homosexual and associated identity issues were not really what this town council meeting was about. The parents' stated goal was singular in intent: a town council ordinance that would make the library move sexually explicit material away from children into restricted access areas.
You guys have it in your email, I know, because I sent it. What does this ordinance do, or rather, what does it not do? It does not restrict anybody's freedom of speech. It does not ban books. It does not discriminate against the LGBT community, as it is equally applied to heterosexual content as well. It is a reflection that bears on the state law. The ordinance will protect our children in the Camp Verde Library from being exposed to sexually explicit content. It is important to know that many of the false accusations and where they're coming from, they originated from what I believe is our management staff at the library. Their false propaganda and fear-mongering. Library managers had conspired with Verde Independent, KBRD, Yavapai County Democratic Party, and other activists to further spread their fake news propaganda, all of which violates the employee policy.
Gay pride colors are red, white, and blue, not rainbow. We pledge allegiance to this flag, not to the rainbow transsexual banner. I marched for gay civil rights in the late 1970s. I marched for a place in society, not to replace society with a gay society. And I watched gay liberation become gay male sexual pleasure liberation. We are 5.6% of society. We never wanted this. What you are doing in our name is going to be a backlash on us. And regarding drag queen story time, I have to ask you, what does a childless homosexual man have any business reading to children? Dress up, make up, act up. These are the values of the selfie generation of Kim Kardashian. These are not American values. I'm a gay man, but I grew up in a very traditional family. I was raised by two wonderful heterosexual people. I am enjoying all the freedoms that all Americans have. I am not a victim. I am not in a marginal group, and I have to wonder, what is the agenda here that we're creating, this sort of prurient society? And I have to wonder, is this about gay male sexual pleasure? Because we know children are impressionable, and I have to wonder, and all these people who are pressing this agenda, what is the agenda? Is it so that these children will be sexually fluid, sexually experimenting when they're at the teenage years, and available to gay men? That's what I believe is the agenda. And quite frankly, we never needed heterosexuals to create user manuals for homosexual acts.
And it's got more and more degenerate, to the point is now where I think everyone seems to have lost their brains. Like they are, essentially grooming other people's children. I'm actually a red-pilled liberal. So when I hear people in there, well, you bigots and you conservatives, and you Christians, well, I'm an atheist. And I'm voting Republican because if the Republicans don't hold this line, LGBT will not survive. And all these virtue signaling people holding up the rainbow transsexual banner, they will walk away. And quite frankly, I never gave them permission to come out there and push an ideology that's not our ideology, and we're not a marginalized, victimized group. And of course, all these people, it sounds like they're reading from a script. It's all these cliches, LGBTQ.
I'm here to speak up for diversity and inclusion, the incredible Camp Verde Library and their amazing staff, as well as parental rights. It's ridiculous that a pride display and staff are under attack. Camp Verde is an abundant local resource center that caters to all people of the public with varying ideologies and belief systems. LGBTQ materials are relevant to today's society and are essential for reducing LGBTQ youth suicide. What are we saying as a community if you give in to the demands of this small conservative group? A group that is solely targeting LGBTQ materials as sexual. Have any of those people began listening and book reporting on non-LGBTQ titles as well? Yeah! Well, good for you. No employee of the library should be worried for the job because they're simply trying to create an inclusive space.
I spent 6 years working as a detention officer, primarily housed sex offenders.
As a jail investigator, I had to read through unimaginable material. And I want to tell you something, this is a violation of an ARS code, I don't care how you interpret it. I am appalled that I take my 9 and 6-year-old into a library that they're no longer allowed in because I protect them. I've seen what these predators can do firsthand. I will not let my child be a victim and a statistic. Did you guys know that 1 in 3 girls will be sexually abused under the age of 18? Before they become 18, 1 in 3. I have 2. So that means that one of my friends that has a girl, one of us is going to have to bear that. 1 in 5 boys will become a victim of sexual abuse. These kinds of books on our shelf are the opening door and an avenue to allow our children to be violated, to allow our innocents and our children to be hurt. I am appalled that an adult librarian can even comprehend that this is justified. There is seriously something wrong with her morals and her values. And it was obviously not the standard.
And I just wanted to give the strongest support I possibly could to the library and to the librarians.
I would submit to you that the fact that this meeting is so crowded and had to be held in such a large place says that you have already violated community standards. And I would like to examine what community standards are. In other words, is that something that's set by the head of the library? Or is it the actual community that sets those standards? I would say it's the community.
I would also ask you to remember is that we're a diverse community, and some of the opinions expressed here tonight are going to be very different from what mine are. But all of us are part of the community, and we all need to be able to access the library as it best suits our own individual needs.
45% of LGBTQ teenagers had given serious consideration to suicide. And I maintain that if one child or young adult in Camp Verde accessed some piece of literature at the Camp Verde Community Library and changed their mind from going down that road, that material is priceless.
I'm here in support of the library. I am totally against censorship of any kind.
And how do you define censorship in this case? The issues at stake. Can you summarize, please?
Restricting access to library material.
Okay, including children.
Yes.
So bad because in the Camp Verde Library Policy Handbook, it reads, explicit sexual material means any drawing, photograph, film, negative, motion picture, figure, object, novelty device, recording, transcription, or any book, leaflet, pamphlet, magazine, booklet, or any other item, the content, the cover, or contents of which depicts human genitalia, or depicts or verbally describes nudity, sexual activity, sexual conduct, sexual excitement, or masochistic abuse in any way which is harmful to minors. Explicit sexual material does not include any depiction or description which, taken in context, possesses serious educational value for minors. However, if you'll remember, one of the very first books I brought you, the cover reads, "Doing It, Let's Talk About Sex, Masturbation, Sex Shaming, Sexual Pleasure, and More." We have brought books to your attention that clearly violate 13507, and you just told a whole room of Camp Verdeans that it didn't. So we are either really stupid, or you really don't care about the future of your town.
I'm a retired bookseller, and I'm a professional writer and editor. The key to a public library is that it's public. It means that no one frame of mind, no one thought process, no one ideology governs what's in it, who comes to it, who uses it, and who decides what's going to continue to stay in it. It's really sad to me to hear the gentleman read from a book that he finds objectionable. And then perhaps in that same ideological core of people, you have those who, let me conflate here, let me stretch, let me reach with the same people who say no abortion under any circumstances. I believe I have the floor. Thank you very much. I think that if we decide as an individual that we can put our own ideas across an entire community, we've made a big mistake. If you have a particular religious or sociological or physiological ideology that you live with, that's great for you and your family. But it doesn't belong being put on everyone else.
The concerned parents of Camp Verde have never, not even once, called for book banning. All that has been asked and spoken firmly on since June 1st was that the books and other sexually explicit material and media be monitored and not available to reach the hands of minors. Clearly, our library is indeed currently in violation of Arizona Statutes 133506 and 133507, public display of explicit sexual materials.
Tonight, this content of these books has been described as obscenities, and in some cases it's been described as pornography. I've only had the chance to review one book. It's called Full Disclosure. The pages that I was most specifically interested in are pages 292 through 295, which is a chapter that's labeled Sexting. The author advises her audience on appropriate ways to engage and further the relationship through sexting. She goes on to make sure to tell them about how sending nude photos is a great way to further the relationship. So, as I've investigated this book, I think that I've come to understand that the library staff believes that this book is appropriate for ages 12 and older. The publisher believes that this is acceptable and rated for ages 14 and over. And I would like you to consider that the author themselves do not feel that this is appropriate content for anybody under the age of 18. She had a small warning that if you are under the age of 18, then I'm not talking to you, because of course that is against the law. In the author's own words, the content is not for an audience of anyone under the age of 18, because if it were, she would be inciting them to break the law and become sex offenders. The library providing this call to send nude photos to one another in the content of the book is at a bare minimum encouraging sexting of nude photos between minors, and it is extremely illegal.
I am not going to be seduced into thinking that's the way you're supposed to be from reading a book. That's my opinion as a person, but I think that parents have the right to have a say in what their children say. Absolutely they do. But they do not have the right to impose their interpretations on other parents or on the community as a whole.
This material, I think we can all agree, we don't hate anyone. We're not here to make enemies. We're just here to protect our children. And I don't think there's anyone that can disagree with that material just read is not appropriate for children to read.
This is not about banning books. Nobody wants to ban books. I don't believe in banning books. I don't believe in banning ideas. All this talk about banning books and preaching hate is just disingenuous, rhetorical, red herrings meant to deflect from the actual issue. That issue being the right of parents to raise their children in the way they think is best. If a parent wants to provide explicit adult material to their children, that is their absolute right, and I will defend their right to do so. I might privately question their parental judgment, but I would defend their right to do so. I would suggest that there's a very simple solution to this controversy. I would suggest that the sexually explicit material be placed in the adult section of the library. This will protect the rights of the parents who want to give it to their children and protect the rights of the parents who don't want to give it to their children. That would solve the controversy, that would end the problem, and then we could all just go home.
I'm here tonight because I'm very concerned about a growing trend of sexually explicit material being pushed on children at inappropriate ages. This is a form of sexual exploitation and indoctrination, which is having devastating consequences for our youth well into their future. It is something that interferes with parents being able to decide how to raise their children and how to raise them with the values that they hold dear. I think it's particularly concerning that given Arizona is amongst the 10 worst in the nation in education, that we have to spend all this energy on just fighting for basic parental rights to not pollute the minds of our young children, instead of teaching them science, math, literature, and basic information they need to learn to thrive in this world. I also want to add that I've seen many reports of people who were indoctrinated into believing they were in the wrong body and then underwent radical surgeries because they were lied to and told that their anxiety and their depression would disappear if they were in a different body.
I choose that we just have the options. You don't have to take those books out of the library, but you can move them. A 12-year-old is not an adult. And if they cannot make decisions for themselves until they are 18, then they should not be able to have that as an option in the library. I also feel as though it is just an extreme exploitation. My kids personally are not allowed to watch YouTube. They're not allowed to stay the night at anybody's houses. My kids are also in a broken home. They share 2 families. They share 2 homes. And it's our job as parents to come together and just really find what's best for our kids. And that's all we're doing. That's all we're doing. We're not going against what, you have your right to believe whatever you want to believe, whether that's God, whether that's Satan, whatever it may be. But let us choose what our kids can watch, what they cannot watch.
It was simply about taking access to explicit material out of the hands of children. That's all it was. And it's not a religious point of view. There's plenty of people from the gay community that feel the same way. There's plenty of people from the secular community that feel the same way. It has nothing to do with religion, with sexual preference. People are trying to make this a First Amendment issue. This has nothing to do with the First Amendment, because by our own admission, obscenity is unprotected in that.
I support the librarians. The First Amendment gives everyone residing in the United States the right to hear all sides of every issue and to make their own judgments about those issues without the government interfering. And I think our librarians are supporting the First and the 14th Amendment.
If you cannot read these books in public, in front of parents, you are the problem. If you do not take that responsibility and bear its weight, then you have no business in front of children at all. Not only should you not be in front of children, you should be arrested for it. The fact that you are able to distribute this stuff to children and of no consequence boggles my mind. This is a weight of trust. We trust our public officials, all of you in front of us, which includes a librarian and anybody in a position of trust. We trust you to do the right thing. Did you also offshore your morality in allowing this to happen? This has to stop. This has to be dealt with. And we will not. The fact that I'm here, I should be at work, I should be providing for my family, but I'm here instead. And that is an indication of how bad it is. This cannot be overlooked. This will not go unnoticed. Do not be weak in the face of this nonsense. Fight it with every way that you can.
And I hope that we do the right thing and we learn to listen to each other and learn to accept diversity in all of its different ways and learn to talk to each other.
I'm a teacher and a mother of 2 preteen boys. If you know me for any bit of time, you would know that I love books. About 1.5 to 2 years ago, I did start seeing changes in the library and just began to notice in particular that more and more literature that is good literature was being put in the book sale because it just wasn't being kept on the shelf. It was getting moved off and being replaced with books of inferior quality and ones that had very specific agendas. As a mother and responsible adult, I am here to be a voice for the children of this generation. Sadly, it did become clear about 1.5 to 2 years ago that the library was no longer a place where we could come and my children could just freely browse the shelves. One of the most beautiful things about childhood is innocence. And books that are being discussed tonight strip the children of their innocence. Semicolon. I urge you to adopt the ordinance.
I do not want to ban books of any kind. That is not the reason why we are here. We are simply asking that these books are kept in an area where children 0 to 17 years cannot have access unless a parent or guardian checks them out. Remember the days of the video store? Adult movies were kept behind the curtain. Magazines like Playboy, Hustler have covers and behind the counter so minors cannot see them. This is not an attack on the people that are in the LGBTQ community. I have family and many friends that belong to this community. And they are also against or for the protection of children. I support a worldwide organization called Gays Against Groomers, an organization of gays against the sexualization and indoctrination of children. This issue alone of protecting children is what should unite us all. The library is no longer a safe place for my child. There will come a time when I will have to have the talk with my 10-year-old son like I did with his 2 older brothers, but that's at my discretion.
This issue stems from deep love of children and the ongoing culture wars fueled by social media. I urge the council to recognize the love of children that is being shown here tonight, but also notice the difference between a policy request and the outright rage, hate, and hostility. Please trust your staff.
I've been an educator for over 32 years. I was a counselor for over 20 years and an assistant principal for 3 years. So I worked with an extreme amount of students for many, many years. I've always felt that it was our duty as parents, number one, teachers, librarians, government officials, to protect our children. That's important. And our community as well. I'm asking that you really look into what is right for our children. This is not a pride issue. Many of the students I worked with were gay, and they were wonderful, and I still love them today, and keep in touch with many of them. That's not what this is about.
This is about our children that walk into a library and they can find a sexually explicit book that says things that I wouldn't even want to say out loud.
There should be some kind of separation with the materials from one level to the next. There's a development issue at hand. And that is one of the things that brought me here, is that the development issue for young minds is not there, or it's confusing to minors when you're pushing agendas on the young mind, sexual agendas in particular.
Parents teach children about morality. But I had no idea that this would be about sex tonight. And it seems like it's about sex and about fear of sex. And God forbid,
I cannot begin to tell you in expressing any words what it's like to take on sexually abused girls. That's what my wife and I did. That was our ministry in Washington. And it was all caused from two things: pornography and drugs. Now the law states in the state of Arizona that it's illegal to put pornographic material 13-3507 where minors can view it. That's against the law. It's also a Class 6 felony. And I must tell you, I'm not against gays. I'm not a bigot. If that's how you want to live your life, I don't have a problem with that. But I cannot understand why. My God, why we don't want to protect our children. My brother's a retired police officer in Illinois, and when you let pornography into your society, pretty soon the girls will come, and then the drugs will come, and it's going to just keep on getting worse. If you want to destroy this beautiful town that you in Camp Verde, and I moved to Arizona to get away from that stuff. I don't go to this library anymore. I don't want anything to do with it.
I was born and raised in this community, and I'm here today because I'm concerned with the hateful and manipulative rhetoric surrounding our library. I'll start by saying I wholeheartedly support our library and the mission to serve and support every single person in this community, even those I disagree with, even those of different political or religious beliefs from my own. Every single person deserves the right to access information free of judgment.
I was raised in Camp Verde. I think I'm a pretty common sense guy, and I think Camp Verde gave me that common sense. And the common sense of this issue is that we need to protect our children, and I'm using my voice again to protect our children from adult content inside books at the library. I have two boys that I'm raising here, and I moved back to this town to raise them in a place that was safe. And I intend, when I bring them to the library, for them not to be exposed to adult material that I actively protect them from on the internet and in movies and on television. And I would not release my 12-year-old into the library knowing they can wander into a section and read content that I've heard read in this forum. I find that personally appalling, and I would not expect anyone to take the side of allowing a 12-year-old child to read the things.
I, for one, appreciate the library put together a pride display for Pride Month. My identity. It's not inappropriate for children any more than your identity is. It is clear that there are people here who pretend they want to protect children, but really just want to make sure that every queer person in the Verde Valley knows that Camp Verde is not safe. Is that the message we as a community want to spread?
Appalled at some of the things that I've seen today or I've heard. I want to reiterate that Camp Verde welcomes all people, and that the people who told one of the previous speakers that they were not safe in Camp Verde, they should be ashamed of themselves. People who are criticizing with extreme prejudice the library and the library staff should also be ashamed of themselves.
My background and experience is a youth director of a youth organization, and I'm currently a teacher in elementary school. And I can assure you that because I'm a youth director over 20 years, I've seen kids abused, and I've seen the reasons and the symptoms and how that happens. when I see books and periodicals that kids have access to, it does something to the brain. I'm not going to give you a lesson on the brain, but their brains, the synapses, the experiences of what they read gets ingrained inside them. The kids are not physiologically, emotionally mature to understand what it is that they're reading. And there is no way that reading about dildos and butt plugs is going to stop any kid from committing suicide. Those books make adults blush. Those books are not things that parents want them to read. And if we want to live in a Pollyannish society and say, oh, it's the parents, they got to do the job. We know that we live in a fatherless society. There's not enough fathers out there. There's not enough parents that are busy. Parents split up, things happen, and kids do stupid things. I talked to a guy last week whose daughter went to a party that she wasn't supposed to go to and she got raped. It happens all the time. You heard the statistics. 1 in 3 girls is going to be sexually abused. This is not an issue of what I'm about to say now, or what I am saying. I think is accepted by gay, straight, whatever orientation that you happen to be. Nobody deserves to be abused. But when we start feeding the abuser, we promulgate the abuse because the kids grow up to become the abusers. And trust me, little kids, 10, 11, 12-year-olds, they're not looking to read these kind of books, and really most of them are not talking about it unless there's some adult feeding them.
And the ACLU is fighting it wherever they appear. So just beware that we have First Amendment rights issues that are at stake here. The fear about children being exposed to things that would upset them is a fear. We cannot legislate against every single fear. We live in a world that is dangerous. There are frightening things. There are dangerous things. And we can't just adopt policies to get rid of them all.
So you need to realize that you work for them. And when these people put a petition to you, just caring about kids, it's not about rainbow flags. These guys go to every meeting. You know, they go to every meeting and they say, oh, we're hate mongers, I'm violent. I'm a 69-year-old man. I just care about my country, I care about God, I care about the children, and you should care about children as well. All these people do. And we have a fringe group, 4%, 5% of society pushing this filth down kids' throats. And all they're asking you here is sign a resolution that keeps that stuff out of kids' hands and properly puts it in an age bracket that's acceptable to the people that live here.
And kind community free of hate and bigotry. Because a handful of discontents can and will never detract.
I served on the school board for 4 years. The problem going into this is that the age appropriate, I'm not sure who's choosing that. It used to be, if I ordered books from Scholastic, I didn't look at them. The kids placed their orders, I handed them out. I would never do that today because they have become so explicit and the grading of them has lowered to the extent of they're not safe for our children.
There are rumors going around in emails about trying to get people fired or to ban books, and that's not what this is about. It's not about hate or discrimination. It's about protecting kids. So if we don't protect our children, who will? There ought to be safe spaces where children are free to be innocent and unpressured by social and political agendas. What stood out to me was about the library selectors, people who select these materials. And I believe I can confidently say that the library selectors do not represent the values of the vast majority of your Camp Verde constituents.
There's a lot of content in these books that a lot of us are upset with, and nobody at the library is responsible for evaluating the content within these books. I find that to be incredibly dull-minded to expect that all the content that the publishers are publishing is perfectly reasonable and we should associate it with grade level or age level reading. And so because it's got 4-letter words in it, we should allow young children to read it.
I'm here because I am appalled that this turned into a big mess as what it has when all we wanted was those books to be removed out of the children's section. if we would have nipped it in the bud, when it first came out, we wouldn't be here being politically against each other. We wouldn't be having the fights and the arguments. It's not political, and it has nothing to do with the LGBTQ people. All we're asking is remove the books from our babies' views and our babies' grasp so they can't get them.
I'm with the Yavapai County Republican Committee. The LGBTQ community only represents about 5% in the state of Arizona, and that's it. And here we are, we're talking about books that, have sexual content in it, that sexualize children. And it sounds like, I'm just going to echo everything that these people have been saying, that we just want these books to be placed in the adult section, and that's it. There's nothing in regards to the LGBTQ community that I'm against. I also want to remind the council that the age of consent in the state of Arizona is 18 years old.
My children knowing that LGBTQ people exist and can have their own loving relationships is not going to make my kids queer.
I don't know if you're all old enough to remember the Verde Valley, the video store up there, they had a back room for adult-themed products.
I've been on YouTube watching other city councils throughout the country with other books. Our books are the choir books compared to what's out there. This filth is, just run with your imagination with that. Now, again, it's already been mentioned that there's been some confusion out here. We're all here because we want to ban books. This is no different than some pervert, from the back alley handing out Hustler magazines at a bus stop in front of a grade school. Same stuff. Now, when I was a kid, somebody did that. They got hauled off to jail. The bottom line is a simple solution. They should go in the porno section, adult, where all the creeps used to come in, and linger. There's a special place for that. We know it's like what they call the red light district. So they should maybe put a red light in the library rooms for that. There's also talk about wanting to fire these librarians for breaking the law. Well, firing does not solve the problem. Since the library it was and is still an active crime scene, they should be arrested, prosecuted, and jailed as any other child molester.
Librarians are some of the most important public service officers in our community right now. They are uniquely equipped and skilled to navigate an information landscape that is increasingly becoming more saturated with misinformation. As information professionals, librarians are passionate about finding information in all subject areas that is both trustworthy and verified to be factual. Librarians are acutely aware that some information is polarizing. It is important that librarians curate a collection of materials that are representative of all viewpoints and perspectives in their communities. That is exactly what the librarians here have done. By demanding restrictions to access information, those supporting such restrictions are attempting to mold the library into an institution that resembles only their ideology. This is undemocratic and fundamentally opposes the mission of a library and a society that values freedom of speech, expression, and religion. In the open marketplace of ideas, the marketplace must remain truly open in order to foster healthy discussions around issues that are complicated and sometimes contentious. Individuals should be trusted to make their own decisions about what they read and believe.
I am a librarian here in the Yavapai Library Network, and I am opposed to censorship of all kinds in the libraries here in the network. Any library that censors books or removes books from the collection, it impacts all users in the county, not just the folks in the town. So I'm here to ensure that libraries are able to maintain their diverse collections here in the county, and that this doesn't start a ripple effect across the state and the nation where it's already a nationwide issue. I think restricting access to information has a very similar impact to removing access to information entirely. It's my understanding of the legal landscape that restricting access to information is unconstitutional at a public institution like a public library. And so I think, I do not support restricting access to information based on the content provided in those materials. If parents are really concerned about what it is that their children have access to in the library, I believe they should accompany their children in the library and then decide what it is that is appropriate and inappropriate for them. Because if you restrict access to materials that other parents do find appropriate for their children, they've reached agreements where they can read some of this material, then they're treading on their rights, and I don't think that that's fair, and I don't think that that's democratic. I mean, this is the culture war, right? I think that there's, unfortunately, libraries are put in a position where they have to react to these kind of things as opposed to being proactive and anticipating some of these arguments for censorship around specifically LGBTQIA2S+ issues.
There were a number of interesting, some passionate speakers to the town council that night, but this one, the last one I present here, was perhaps the most poignant and indicting of whoever the bigots in this story might be.
It's also important to know that I'm also a transgender man. I was born biologically female, and when I transitioned over 20 years ago, the library saved my life. I traveled 5 hours just to go and find books so that I could read about people like me. It's important that we don't screen out things that we don't like, no matter what direction it's coming from. However, when I found out about this meeting tonight, I was sent an email that said the Camp Verde Library is under attack. They're attacking LGBT people. If we don't have LGBT materials in the library, then LGBT transgender youth, those transgender suicide rates go up. It's important to have these materials. However, I am a parent, and I don't want sexually explicit materials being able to be checked out, or not checked out, but even just taken from the shelf by a child who's not quite ready to have that conversation. Parents should be able to have that right to speak to their children about sex, not the library, not social media. And so I'm mad that this has become an issue about rainbows and raising rainbow flags. This is not correct. This is not correct. This doesn't make me proud of my identity. This makes me get defensive to defend the conservative people that are in this room that say, hey, we want to protect our children. You're right. It's not about LGBT issues, it's about safety of children.
After the town council meeting, the local press weighed in on what the parents' battle against the local library was all about. One newspaper headlined their story, Camp Verde Library staff sees threats for certain books on shelves. Another media outlet headlined their coverage of the event, Camp Verde Library addresses harassment and threats to staff and demands by some to ban books. The real story, parental objection to pornography for kids, is twisted into a story about the esteemed, noble library under attack, distilled into an alleged parental pseudo-violence, threats, harassment, and book bans. An out-of-town leftist lobbying group, Secular Arizona, an expressly atheist group that hates, might we use that word as loosely as they do, anything religious, had a reporter present for the town council meeting. Her headline to smear the parents was Fear-Mongering in Camp Verde. Subheadings in that story included unreasonable concern over LGBTQ literature, religious agenda of book banners exposed at meetings, and town council and library not bending to hate. One of the key arguments from parents this day was that the library was actively violating an Arizona law, ARS 13-3507, in providing obscene material to minors. There is such an Arizona law. Does the Camp Verde Public Library violate it? Should the director of the library go to jail for providing porno to children? The answer rests firmly on the issue of pornography. How does one define it in 2023? The answer also rests on the political power of left-wing movements, including the powerful American Library Association, to enforce their ideology upon everyone else's children. Should kids be encouraged to frolic through a library wonderland of open porno as a free speech issue for tots, or should parental restrictions guidance be respected? Must parents hover over their kids through what was once a neutral library environment, not a porn store? When I was a kid, in the values of those times, clearly the librarian goes to jail for presenting porno to children. Nowadays, the tenets of liberalism are so vast and have eroded traditional values so deeply that it's hard to pinpoint what exactly pornography might be anymore. No matter how degrading and debasing the content, someone is going to get a lawyer and claim censorship and a freedom of speech issue. Today, this claim has become omnipresent, even in the context of what is presented to debase our children. Even at heart, what was once one of our most trusted institutions, libraries.